You found why we are Christians. My name is Kent Philpott, and we're zooming with somebody down in Orange, California. That's just a little bit south of Los Angeles, and her name is Marsha Butler. Hello, Marsha.
Hi, I'm so glad I could join you.
Yes, well, it's taken us a long time to get this ready. We had all kinds of complications here in the studio, but we finally got to it. Okay, Marsha Butler, and we'll go a little bit about who you are and so on. So tell us a little bit about it. Where were you born?
Okay, well, I was born actually in Pasadena, and
Pasadena.
yeah, right in the middle of the 60s, 1960s.
Okay.
And yeah, I grew up in that area, that part of Los Angeles.
Well, what high school did you go to?
Well, when I was 12, we moved to the San Diego County area,
Okay.
and I ended up going to a high school in the town of La Jolla called the Bishop School.
Okay.
So I grew up in Southern California, but really Los Angeles till I was about 12, and then we moved to San Diego.
Okay. So, all right. So very good. Well, tell us a little bit about your parents and your family.
So I actually am really thankful for my parents, and they're still alive today. My dad's 90, my mom is 87. They met right in the middle of the 50s, 1950s, got married. My mom was 18. My dad was about 23. You know, that's very typical at that time. And my parents were, I would say that they were believers at that time. My dad was the son of a Presbyterian minister and missionary, had missionary parents. His parents had served in China. And my mom had come to faith as a Christian as a little girl.
Okay.
So,
Now,
yeah.
I saw you sent me today a picture of your parents and your
Yeah.
brothers.
So,
Oh, that's
three
right.
older brothers and a sister. Yeah, and I'm the youngest.
Okay. All right. Very good. So so you went to high school, graduated what year?
1984.
84. Okay. Now, what did you do after high school?
So I went back east and I attended Yale University. I ended up majoring in English and graduating from Yale 1989.
Wow.
So
Wow. Really? At Yale. So what did you do with after graduation from Yale?
I came back to Southern California, and this is really part of my story about coming to faith. Graduating from Yale, that time period for me was really key because I graduated and really I had come to faith when I was a child, but when I was at Yale, I really recognized that my relationship with Jesus was sort of empty. And the things I was doing were, even though I was at a great university, I was learning a lot of great things, my soul was pretty empty by the time I graduated. And I really prayed for that God would become more really the focus of my life and that he would provide me Christian friends, a church, things that I didn't have at Yale. Because even though Yale was founded as a university for training pastors, believe it or not, but you know, its foundation is totally Christian. The school itself, for me, my experience there was that it was not a time when I was really close to the Lord, and I wasn't around people who were.
Okay. So now you're back in California, right? This is after
Yeah.
college. What happened then? What was going on with you then?
So I had really prayed for a chance to connect with the Lord, and my brother, who had graduated from Berkeley, had had a really amazing time in his life where God just made himself very real to him when he was at UC Berkeley. And so he had really become quite I call it on fire Christian, very much involved reading his Bible. The Bible I have today is still the Bible that my brother Charlie gave to me at that time. This is it right here. I love this Bible, but he was really influential because he had graduated already, and we ended up living at my other brother's home in Orange County. And so at that time I started attending church here in Orange County at Calvary Church, with him, and, started working, had some different jobs that I was doing, like worked in marketing, worked in sales. But really my focus at that time was just the excitement of being involved in a church and meeting people that were Christians. And I led worship because I've always played guitar and sang. So that was something that was really a fun thing for me to get involved in as well.
Okay. So now I saw the picture of you and Jonathan, your husband. Now, tell us about that. How did that all happen?
So in my 20s, I was in Orange County, but later in my early 30s, I was really praying about the next step. I had worked as a teacher for a time. As I mentioned, I'd worked in companies, but I had a friend who lived in the Bay Area, and he had a position at his company available. So I prayed about it, and I felt like God gave me the confirmation that to step out and move up to the Bay Area. And I didn't know anyone up in the Bay Area. So in my early 30s, I moved up there, and that's when I got involved in Christian ministry. I didn't marry Jonathan until I was 45. So that was quite a ways. I was single for a long time, and I want to talk about this because I think it's such an important topic. There are many people who are single for, through their 30s into their 40s, for long periods of time. And that was for me, because one of the questions that you asked me is, challenges in my life. I had excitement to be involved in ministry, but I also had a desire to get married and have a family. And it took a while for that prayer to be answered. And living in that waiting time can be difficult for people. I was fortunate that when I came up to the Bay Area, God placed me to work at a church, Menlo Park Presbyterian Church. And I was working with the singles ministry there. I had a lot of great people around me. I have to say, that time in my life was not lonely at all. It was full of life and functions and events and just seeing people come to Christ and grow in their faith. And so it was a great time. But then when I was in my 40s, the next step for me was some of the pastors who mentored me encouraged me that I need to take the next step to go to seminary. So that led me back down to Southern California, where I met my husband, Jonathan.
Now, Marsha, what you said is encouraging, I think, to a lot of people. My two youngest daughters they just both turned 31, and neither married. They'd both like to be, and it just hasn't worked out. They both have very good jobs, great educations, and I kind of see them going through this, wondering if they'll wanting to get married, wanting to have a family, and so it's become a matter of prayer for me for them, my dear daughters, they're twins, and
that's wonderful. Well, I think that's so great that you are praying for them, because I believe I really do believe that Jonathan was handpicked for me, and I had just dedicated people in my life praying for me. When I went to seminary, I had a prayer team that was praying for me going down to seminary. And they also prayed for me that I would meet the husband that God had for me. And Jonathan has been such an answer to prayer. I mean, now we're married 11 years. So it's almost 11 years. So it's been amazing. But I think that having the courage to wait for God to confirm it is really important. And I dated quite a few people that, it wasn't the right thing, and being able to know that was, that God had something for me and to trust him was a big part of that.
Now, I want to go back to the Menlo Park Presbyterian Church, okay? I got my doctorate from a Presbyterian seminary, and my two other degrees were from a Baptist seminary, Golden Gate Baptist Theological Seminary in Mill Valley. But I've always felt very close to Presbyterians. We seem to have a very similar kind of theology. Um, so tell us a little bit about the Menlo Park, Marsha, the church. What were you doing there? You're working with singles ministries?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And when I came into the church, I worked with 3 different pastors. It was really just a gift from God because I had never been in ministry. I was a pastoral assistant, and we had ministries to, different age groups, because oftentimes that's really how people connect, is based on age and stage.
Uh-huh.
And so I worked with those. We also had specific ministries for divorce recovery. We had also a relationship ministry that were special events that we would put on for all singles of all ages, like boundaries in dating, things that would help, the whole community to, how do we live as Christians in this stage in our life when we're single?
Wonderful.
So that was great.
I remember back in the day, I knew about Menlo Park Presbyterian Church. Now, you said divorce recovery workshop. We started a divorce recovery workshop in January of 1986. We used Bruce Fisher's book called Rebuilding. Is that for?
Oh, wow.
Okay. In fact, we just started last night our first of the year divorce recovery workshop, and I can look out the door here and I can see Mary, and she's the one that Mary and Katie my wife are the ones that leading that workshop now. And
that's great. It's so needed. It's such an important ministry.
Oh,
and
it is.
So many people came to Menlo through that divorce recovery ministry that weren't, churchgoers at all until that.
Yes. Okay. Very good. So you met Jonathan, and you've been married, you said 11 years ago?
Yeah.
Okay, 11 years
absolutely. Ago. And so let me just kind of focus on that for a moment, because this is a story that I think will give some encouragement to some of the people watching. A lot of people, it's so funny because, even as I do talk to a lot of Christians that want to believe that, that when you meet somebody, that you really don't have to do any effort to meet them. And for me, I started to realize I need to get out there and meet people, because I'm involved in ministry. Or actually, I was involved in taking classes at Talbot. But I went online and I signed up for christianmingle.com. I signed up for, I'm forgetting some of the ones that are out there. eHarmony. I think I did eHarmony. And I met Jonathan through christianmingle.com. And that was, I'm so thankful I stepped out and did that, because I would never have met him. I was really thinking I'll meet him in a class at Talbot, but that's not where Jonathan was. And I'm so thankful that I had the chance to meet him, and his background is totally different from mine, but it's an incredible blessing, because us together, I feel we really complement each other.
And the photo that you sent me the other day, Marsha, you had you and Jonathan, and then in between you was a young man.
Yes.
Jesus.
Okay, so Jesus has been an incredible blessing in our lives, and he is now he's 17. We actually, when Jonathan and I got married, we had talked about it. We prayed about it. We decided if we didn't have kids of our own, that we would adopt. That was something that we really felt would be wonderful to be able to do. And when I was working in ministry at a Crossroads Church, Jonathan and I signed up to serve at a ministry called Royal Family Kids Camp. And Royal Family Kids Camp ministers to kids who have been in foster care. And he actually was the counselor for Jesus, who was at the time about 10 years old. Just a really cute little boy who was a part of the camp.
Where was he Jesus from? Where was he born?
He was born in Compton in Los Angeles. And the actual Royal Family Kids Camp was out in the San Bernardino area. So he was living in that area. And through the camp, Jonathan did 2 summers of counseling and being his counselor. And also signed up to mentor him. So every 2 weeks, Jonathan would take Jesus out to do different things. And we just started praying about him and the situation with his foster care home that he was in. And God opened doors for him to come into our home as our own foster child, and then to be able to adopt him.
Okay.
So it's been amazing. And actually, it was this January that the adoption went through finally and officially.
Okay, good. All right, good. So, very good. Yeah, the people who will have seen the photo with you and Jonathan and Jesus by this time, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
It's already probably come up. Now, you've mentioned a couple times Talbot Theological Seminary. And where's that located? I know the school, but I think it's in the Los Angeles area.
Yes, Talbot is located at Biola University, and that is in La Mirada. And La Mirada is it's kind of in Los Angeles, but very close to Orange County. So it's right in between. I would say it's right in between Orange County and Los Angeles, but it's actually in LA.
Okay. So Biola, Bible Institute of Los Angeles. And so now Talbot is related to Biola.
Yes. It's the theological school. So it's basically their seminary.
Okay. Talbot, what was that name? Who was Talbot?
So he actually was pretty amazing. Talbot, and I wish I could give you more information about him, but he was a pastor. He actually, I think he came out of the, Biola came out of the Los Angeles organization. I think the church that was located in LA. I'm not giving you very good information on this because I don't know the details on it, but he was a really great, what I've read on him is great thinker, great pastor. So that's why it's named after him.
Okay. So what year did you start at Talbot?
I started at Talbot in 2008.
2008. All right. And you were studying for a Master's of Divinity? What we call the MDiv.
Yes. I got an MDiv with an emphasis in spiritual formation.
Spiritual formation. Okay. All right. Now this is prior to when you're married to Jonathan.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're at Talbot, and so it's, you say La Mirada.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So tell me about your experience at Talbot a little bit.
Well, Talbot, I was really fortunate to be a part of their Institute for Spiritual Formation. And that's an emphasis, a whole school really that they developed because they realized that people in churches need to be able to grow in their relationship with the Lord and discipleship. And they felt there was a need for more focus on prayer and reflection and really doing the work of growing personally in the faith. And that was really great for me. I felt like that part of my studies was great because it was interacting with people. I had a number of students that I was assigned to mentor and to sit with and to listen to them in spiritual direction. So that was also just going on retreats. We were required to do 4 48-hour retreats where we would actually spend some time in solitude and prayer. And so that was a really good challenge for me. And I felt like it complemented what I was doing, which was, very studious with the Greek and the Hebrew and all that. And I think probably that aspect of Talbot, of interacting and working with people and listening to them and about prayer, was probably the most important part of what I learned. Okay. Because I used it when I got out as a pastor.
Now, okay, so what happened after you graduated from Talbot, Marsha?
So after I graduated from Talbot, shortly after, Jonathan and I got married. And then I got a job working as pastor of women at a church in Corona. called Crossroads Church.
Okay. So what were you doing at that church?
So I was actually in charge of the women. It's a very large church. I mean, the actual sanctuary seats about almost 3,000. So they
Wow.
have very large services, and then the actual women's gatherings would be very large, sometimes up to 400 women. And the church itself kind of went through some changes while I was there. So I had different roles. I was also became in charge of life groups, pastoring those in life groups and that kind of thing.
Now, were you ordained?
No, I wasn't ordained at Crossroads. And I made a decision not to be ordained through PCUSA because I was going through that process when Menlo was part of PCUSA. And I made a decision not to continue because I didn't agree with the theology that PCUSA was going towards. And so for me, I stepped away from that, and I ended up leaving Crossroads after 3 years because I realized I wanted to make a change. And also, shortly after, we ended up bringing Jesus into our home. So there are just some changes I went through.
Okay. Now, the church was a Presbyterian USA.
The church I went to, Crossroads, was not affiliated at all with the Presbyterian Church.
Okay.
So I went a different direction than the Presbyterian Church. So when I was in seminary, I was starting the process of being ordained through PCUSA because when I was in seminary, I'd come from a Presbyterian church, but I ended that process. So when I was done I didn't go forward with ordination. And when I was done with seminary, I was open to working at churches that were not Presbyterian. That's why I went to a church. Crossroads I'd say it's more in line with the Baptist church. We had a lot of focus on every service giving people a chance to make a decision for believing in Jesus and also being baptized.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Very good. Very good, Marsha. That's a very interesting road you've traveled. So.
Yeah, and I believe strongly in baptism. I mean, to be honest, my theology isn't really in line with the Presbyterian Church when it comes to baptism. I mean, I was baptized as a baby, but I got rebaptized when I was 21. I wanted to make my own personal statement of faith, and I believe in immersion baptism because the Greek actually, it means to be immersed. And it's beautiful. I mean, baptism, when you're in services and you see people being baptized and you get a chance to baptize them, as I have and my husband has, it's a spiritual event and it's absolutely beautiful. And so that's one aspect for me that's very important.
You know what? You're very similar to me. Very, very. We have a lot of similarities, Marsha.
I think so.
Indeed. Okay, now we got 4.5 minutes left for this first program. Then we're going to completely shift gears.
Okay.
Completely shift gears for people who are going to be watching this. You got to see the program number 2 with Marsha. So tell me what you're doing right now. Where you're living in Orange. And where are you going to church?
Okay, so I am going to church at Trinity United Presbyterian Church.
Okay.
So this is just God's, I just go where he leads me. And he led me to this church, a number of years ago. And I worked at Trinity as director of discipleship. And my son, Jesus, has been very involved in the high school ministry. And God's just opened up doors for me to be able to teach and to disciple. And right now, I am really working. I write the studies for a Bible study that is about 20 women. It's at a women's home. And I'm writing it, and it's in 1 Samuel. So
say that last part again.
So I'm writing. I've written the study for a whole women's group, and the study is in First Samuel.
First Samuel, okay.
Yeah, so when my desire is really to get better and better at writing discipleship materials, because I believe that's what people in the church are really needing. Because so many pastors preach topically, that means they're teaching just on like one passage this week, a different passage next week. Very few go book by book through the Bible. I feel like the church doesn't really have a whole, really not very strong in the Old Testament, not knowing books very well in depth. And so my goal is to just get better and better at helping disciple people in their faith and writing the materials that will help them do it.
About the preaching, I think we identify together again in that I like Bible expository preaching.
Yeah.
We go verse by verse.
Yes.
Verse by verse, every verse. Because I want people to know what the Scripture says. They don't need to know what's going on in Philpott's head. We want to know what the Scripture's saying. Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. And since you're probably very familiar with this, when you get into a Bible study with a group of people and you do that, tons of questions come up. Yeah. And that's where discipleship happens, because, the Bible is not super easy to understand if you just read it and not get any direction.
Right.
And so people are kind of left on their own to figure things out. And I really think it's so important to take it to read the Scripture in context, to be able to read it all the way through the book, like you're saying, verse by verse.
How about Greek? Do you study any Greek?
Oh my gosh. Well, I actually took, when I was at Talbot, I think it was at least 5 classes in Greek and 2 to 4 classes in Hebrew. I can't remember, but I have to tell you, I wasn't a Greek scholar, but some of it has stayed with me and I try to remind myself of it, but it's not an easy language.
No, it isn't. I love it though.
That's good that you keep reading it.
I've taken a lot of Greek and it's a good thing. Bible expository sermons. Well, all right, Marsha. Well, we're gonna come to an end here on this, and then we're gonna come back and talk about how you contacted me originally, how this all happened, how this all took place, and you have to warn everybody that the next segment's going to be wild, and you're gonna hear some things that you've never heard before, perhaps. But anyway, Marsha, well, very good. So go ahead and freshen up, get a glass of water, a cup of coffee, and we're going to be back in a little bit. So we've reached the end of Why We Are Christians. Be looking for the second program with Marsha Butler.